I truly do believe the day will soon come when we will heal our land and we'll be able to reopen America and put this great nation back to work. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Mr. President?
Mr. President, is now the time for sarcasm?
All right, well, that's a surprise. After the Vice President speaks, after Stephen Hahn, the head of the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, speaks, the President makes brief opening comments. They simply walk out and refuse to answer questions, presumably because the President knew he was about to be bombarded with very serious, important questions about what he said yesterday, which turned out to be a lie as far as ingesting various products that could kill you potentially. And the President said he was simply being sarcastic when, of course, if you look at the videotape, and those of us who covered it yesterday know he was not being sarcastic at all. He was being very, very serious. Gloria Borger is watching all of this unfold. Clearly, the President was afraid of the serious questions he was about to be asked by the journalists who were there at that briefing. This first time this has happened, he's refused to answer questions. He's probably afraid to do so.
Well, look, when he did answer a question earlier today, and he lied and said he was being sarcastic about what he said about disinfectant in your body and perhaps light in your body being able to somehow cure coronavirus. When he suggested that, he got himself into a lot of trouble. He knew he was going to be asked about it again, and he doesn't like being asked tough questions. So what I would raise here is, well, if the President is just going to read something that someone wrote for him an hour ago and pick it up and read it, then perhaps these coronavirus briefings should be going back to the people who are the scientists, and Mike Pence, who runs the coronavirus task force and who is on the conference calls with the governor. And perhaps that is the way they ought to be, rather than having the President at the podium dispensing rumor and false scientific information.
I don't think we've seen anything like this from the President during this coronavirus pandemic. He has appeared in the briefing room briefly from time to time and then ducked out again. But this is a whole different kind of experience, Wolf. And I think you're right on the money on this. This is a president who is feeling the heat big time after he made that outlandish, ridiculous comment yesterday that people could inject themselves potentially with household disinfectants as a cure for the coronavirus, and then tried to walk it back today by saying he was being sarcastic. That was obviously a lie. Earlier in the day, the White House press secretary put out a statement that didn't mention anything about sarcasm, just accused the press of taking things out of context. But I will tell you, Wolf, just a couple of things, just to put all of that to the side for the moment. I think the fact that Dr. Fauci and Dr. Birx were not in this briefing today is important, and my colleague Kevin Liptak and I have been doing some reporting on this. The President has been making life difficult for the medical experts on the coronavirus task force. I can tell you, and Kevin can say from talking to our sources, that some of the experts on the task force are just very reluctant to publicly disagree with the President on camera. And some of this dynamic goes to the extent that, you know, there are times when these experts don't want to stand behind the President. They'd rather be off to the side of the room because they don't want the camera to pick up the expressions on their face when the President is making these sorts of comments. And you saw what happened yesterday in the briefing room as the President was talking about sunlight therapy and disinfectant therapy, all of which is hogwash. The camera, the cutaway camera on the side of the briefing room, was zooming in on Dr. Birx to get her reaction. I can tell you from talking to our sources, Wolf, the experts on this task force are highly aware of those cameras, and they're very concerned about their expressions being picked up. They don't want to be seen as publicly disagreeing with the President or perhaps laughing at the President when he makes these sorts of claims. And what you end up with, the end result of that, is a lot of the experts that the public is relying on can't really give the American people the truth because they're worried about the President lashing out at them or making some kind of scene that has to be cleaned up later. And to some extent, Wolf, it may just be better off for everybody that the press conference ended so early today, despite the fact that we would like to pepper the President with lots of questions. He wasn't given the opportunity today, or didn't take the opportunity today, to put out a lot of junk science and a lot of poppycock ideas that just aren't going to hold up when scientists take a look at it. So perhaps the public might have been spared in that respect, Wolf.
On every one of these disinfectants, it says for external use only. It's not that you don't have to be a brilliant scientist or doctor to understand. You don't inject this in your mouth. You just use it on your hands, and that's about it. It's pretty extraordinary that the CDC had to issue a statement today telling the American people, don't inject this in your body.
They were worried enough, Wolf, about this that people might, misinterpret and hear the comments that were made by the president and not, sort of immediately walked back by his scientific experts and maybe do something that's dangerous to themselves. So I think that's why the CDC did that. I guess manufacturers of some of these products also put out statements today. It's one of these things that I think most people already knew just in the bucket of common sense not to do this sort of stuff. I'm sure most people knew that, even kids knew that. But nevertheless, here we are having this conversation about this. Whereas there's really important stuff going on around this story in terms of these drug trials, vaccine trials, new developments in that area. I will say that over the past 24 hours, in addition to the shenanigans around injecting disinfectants, there was also now some new guidance from the FDA saying to slow down the roll on hydroxychloroquine, saying, right now there seems to be significant side effects with that medication. You may remember, Wolf, at one point the FDA said we're going to start trialing this, but we're also going to make it available off-label use for physicians to use as they see appropriate. Now the FDA is saying we'll continue the clinical trials, but based on side effects, based on the early data showing that there's not efficacy, effectiveness here, we're not suggesting people use this outside of a clinical trial anymore. And also these antibody kits, Wolf, there's been lots of tests that have come out into the market. Understandably, there's a real rush to try and get some of these tests out there to improve testing overall for the virus as well as for antibodies. But many of them, Wolf, were not validated. They were not, showing accuracy that was high enough to give people confidence in those results. So you also heard the FDA commissioner talking about how they're going to improve the validation around these tests. So, significant things going on, but not overwhelmingly good news in some of these areas. Still a lot of work to be done.
And it is extraordinary, Sanjay, when you think about it, not only the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, has to issue a statement trying to clean up what the president said on these disinfectants. Maybe you should inject them into your body. And as you correctly point out, the Food and Drug Administration has to issue a statement today saying that this drug that the president has touted now for a few weeks, although he's been silent on it over the past few days, hydroxychloroquine, is potentially very dangerous. Let me read a couple sentences from the formal statement publicly that the FDA issued. The FDA is aware of reports of serious heart rhythm problems in patients with COVID-19 treated with hydroxychloroquine or chloroquine, often in combination with azithromycin or other QT prolonging medicines. It then says, we would like to remind healthcare professionals and patients of the known risks associated with both hydroxychloroquine and chloroquine. Hydroxychloroquine and chloroquine have not been shown to be safe and effective for treating or preventing COVID-19. And then it winds up by saying, patients who have also had other health issues such as heart and kidney disease are likely to be at increased risk of these heart problems when receiving these medicines. That was another slap at the President of the United States, what he and some of his supporters have been touting about this treasure trove of hydroxychloroquine.
Yeah, I mean, Wolf, it's too bad, right? Because we need to have an effective medicine. Everybody wants that. You want that. I want that. Everybody on the planet wants that. We are in the midst of a pandemic. So it's terrible news always, or not good news when these trials don't work. There are many trials that are going on around the world on all sorts of different potential medicines. The hydroxychloroquine, which is one that's obviously gotten a lot of attention, there's been a drumbeat now of news and early studies, I will add, small studies, but these early studies are not promising at all, Wolf, in terms of showing effectiveness. Some of them have shown some harm, as you pointed out, Wolf. That's why the FDA is making this statement. There was a study that came out of France that showed in higher doses this medicine could cause some these heart rhythm abnormalities. So that's obviously a significant concern. Last night, we asked Governor Cuomo about this, and the reason being that many of the doses that were purchased went to the state of New York and were being given in New York at 5 different hospitals as part of a clinical trial. We're going to await the final results there, but we did ask Governor Cuomo what did the early results show, and he said basically the headline was they did not seem to be any more effective in treating this COVID infection versus a placebo, versus taking no medication at all. Again, that's not good news. I mean, we all want a successful therapeutic, regardless of who's endorsing it or supporting it or whatever. But this hydroxychloroquine, so far, Wolf, doesn't appear to be the way out. Again, there's other medicines that are being studied. We'll wait for the final results on hydroxychloroquine. They should be coming by the end of the month, we hear. But so far, it doesn't look promising.
And we'll see what this other drug, remdesivir, to see how that works out. There's some trials involving that, a whole bunch of other drugs as well.